What's going on, people? Welcome to United View and welcome to a very interesting video, very special video and a very special guest. We've got David Hellier joining us from Bloomberg to talk all things Manchester United takeover. There's so much going on and you guys have asked for somebody from this field. You know, we talk about transfers all the time and football journalists and stuff, but today we have a financial journalist joining the show for hopefully what will be a great insight, which I'm sure it will. David, thank you for joining us, first of all. Thanks for coming to the channel. How are you? All good?
Yeah, all good, thanks. Yeah, all good.
Perfect. I mean, there's only one place to start, really, and that is who is most likely to buy Manchester United. We've seen Sir Jim Ratcliffe in the wings, and now we're hearing a lot about Qatari interest in Manchester United. What's the latest, and how do you see this at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I'd honestly sort of find it very hard to give you, the favourite.
Of course.
I think on one level, Jim Ratcliffe's the favourite because he faces virtually no political scrutiny. I mean, he is an offshore taxpayer, so some people say that's against him. But in terms of, regulatory decision making, it's very little scrutiny from him. The interest from Qatar is fascinating because I think before the World Cup, I was certainly being told that the QSI, which owns PSG, had no interest in Manchester United, and that there wasn't really anyone else there. Now, the World Cup seems to have changed things. I was out there, I think you were there as well. There was a real passion for, first of all, a feeling of pride, I think, at putting on the World Cup in the way that it was delivered. And then I think after it, I was told that, meetings took place, at which it became clear that expanding Qatar's football empire was a good thing, something they wanted to do. They were persuaded by the passion of the World Cup and the strength of football and all that sort of thing. And they looked particularly at the Premier League. I mean, I was told, before then they were happy with PSG. They bought a stake in a Portuguese club, Braga. It looked like that kind of building bricks was going to carry on with another smallish European acquisition. But they suddenly were saying, no, that's not enough. That we can't ignore the Premier League; it's unstoppable. And then when you sort of say we can't ignore the Premier League, you then start saying, hang on a minute, the biggest club on earth is for sale. Can we ignore that? And they were saying, no, we can't ignore that either. But they still didn't really commit to throwing their hat in the ring. I think what we're hearing in the past few days is that there's a serious discussions taking place. Financiers being sought, public relations people being rung up and asked, are you potentially able to come on board and that kind of thing. So it looks like that this is very imminent, I think, of an expression of Qatari interest. We haven't seen the list of bidders at all yet, I think. There's meant to be a soft deadline on Friday. I can imagine if it's anything like the Chelsea bidding situation, then that deadline won't be a hard deadline. It won't be the end of the road. So people might come in after Friday. You've got a lot of Americans possibly coming in, possibly got a Saudi consortium. That obviously has complications because of Newcastle. So it couldn't be anything related to the Sovereign Wealth Fund, PIF. But we're really when you talk about favourites, we haven't even jumped the first fence yet. So it's a long process.
To nail that down.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't have told you at the beginning of the Chelsea process really that Bowley was going to win. He was a clear, strong candidate, but it really didn't become clear until quite near the end.
With this and Manchester United and Qatar being involved, could you just give us an insight or your understanding of the difference between the situation if PSG the owners of PSG are part of that? I did see some stuff about maybe UEFA could look at different rules. Are they separate entities, the people who own PSG, or is this the same people who want to buy Manchester United over PSG? Is
Yeah,
there an
I
answer?
mean, uh, good question. I think, to be honest, we're hearing that they say they're separate. Um, Whether they actually are separate will become a bit clear. You know, it's in the eyes of the beholder in a way. It's in the eyes of UEFA. I mean, the thing about this UEFA rule, it doesn't stop anybody buying a club. I mean, they buy the club, that's fine.
Yeah,
It comes to a crunch if they both are in the Champions League, and obviously, in the case of Manchester United and PSG, that's pretty likely. Um, so that's when it comes to the crunch. And in 2018, there was a situation where Red Bull, to all intents and
yeah,
purposes, seemed to own Leipzig and Salzburg. Um, and they managed to persuade the UEFA over a hearing that took several hours, days, I think, that they were in fact run independently. Um, so I think, in a way, that's why language might be quite important at the moment. Um, we might have always in the past referred to QSI as a kind of subsidiary of the QIA. You know, that might, I mean, maybe they have separated a little bit. Um, Maybe, you know, or maybe they will be able to show that they are independently run in terms of. I mean, the obvious problem is, you know, if you get those two meeting in a Champions League game, and the owners decide that they prefer PSG wins rather than Man United, because they've never won the Champions League before or whatever, it would be a travesty. So Man United fans would, be, up in arms, and maybe as fed up as they are with the Glazers,
mm,
and um, um, but if it really can be shown that, that they haven't been doing any trading with each other, that, there's a completely different board. I don't know. I mean, to me, it's sort of, they have to be very careful that they are separate.
yeah. I see what you mean because there was a lot of confusion amongst fans. Are they are they the people that are running PSG or are they not? So interesting to sort of hear you say that. Another thing that Manchester United fans are really interested in is the situation with debt, and I hope that you could maybe enlighten us about how it does and maybe doesn't work and what the sort of processes could be because some reports and what Manchester United fans seem to be what we care about is can this do the Glazers need to get rid of the debt in order to sell the club? And is it important that new owners take that on or clear that? Or is it common practice or actually something that can be done quite often to still have that debt there in the club, even though new owners come in? Basically, what would happen with the debt?
Yeah, I mean, this is all speculation at the moment, but I mean, from my understanding, one of the big problems with the Glazers has been that they've taken out money in dividend payments. Uh, I mean, all clubs have a certain amount of, not all of them, but they live with a certain amount of debt. And I know the debt has been going up, but when interest rates were low, that may have been a financially efficient thing to do. Um, I, I I can't imagine. I mean, if you're talking about a Ratcliffe,
Yeah.
um, I, I don't know the way. You have to look at the way he runs Ineos, and he's been very successful, but it's a very cash generative business. You you have to. I mean, all businesses will decide what levels of debt they're taking on. I think I would focus more on what money they're taking out rather than the debt levels. But I know that's very difficult for United supporters because
Mm,
it's been a it's been a constant irritant. So and I think that um, Ratcliffe will be tested on that. Um, you're less likely to have debt overhangs with the Qataris because they've got the cash, from their energy uh, and resources. It's not going to be that kind of situation, but it needn't be a problem as long as he's properly financed.
mm.
I
That's
think,
that's really interesting to hear because, like you said, a lot of Manchester United fans, we are fixated on, we want new owners to basically come in, wipe the debt, so Manchester United is debt free, and then they just put money in. We get a new stadium, we get new training facilities,
mm,
we get,
mm.
money for transfers, and I think that's the beauty of doing this, because I just wanted to see, you know is that how essential is that, basically? I mean, could the Qataris, or whoever, let's just say the new owners, is there still a way where the new owners could still come in and that debt could still be there, but they could still be successful owners? Or is
Yeah,
one of
no,
those, yeah,
absolutely. Having debt doesn't necessarily is not necessarily a bad thing if it's being uh, you know, paid back and stuff. And it might be for tax reasons. It might be for you know reasons of just their own balance sheet. It's not necessarily a bad thing. The worst thing I would have thought is for it's the long term strategy. Are they just there to make a profit, or are they there to grow the club? To win trophies and stuff. I mean, you'd have to think somebody like Jim Ratcliffe in his 70s. Pretty. I mean, I think he is a committed United supporter.
yeah,
I mean, I met him a few years ago when he wasn't thinking of buying Manchester United, and he was going to Chelsea games, and I'm a Chelsea fan, and I think his brother's a Chelsea fan, and he said, "No, I'm not a Chelsea fan. I'm Man United through and through." And
so he made
talked to
that clear
me,
to you at the time.
yeah, and yeah, and that was before he even had a glint in his eye about buying Man United. So I think he's kind of guy I think who his ambition would be to win the most things for United. I do think that how he does that financially, and I mean there is a danger maybe that the danger in a way is for me is more that the Glazers want so much uh, in order to sell. So all I hear is they don't really care who buys it; they just want the most money.
That's
That
typical
that
Glazers, yeah,
yeah,
100%.
but that is more of a threat I think than because then if he's overstretched and he hasn't really got enough money for it, and he's got to borrow money at the top end. I mean, it's a problem, but it won't be because um, he wants to have lots of debt. It'll be because that's the only way he can finance it because they've charged him such a lot of money.
Mm,
Uh, and then you've got to think, is he going to take money out? I don't think so. I mean, I don't think that's what he's doing it for, but he's doing it to grow it. Um, I would have thought. But I mean, these are questions. This is going to be a process that's going to go on for several weeks now, and as each day passes, or certainly once the first deadline passes, you'll know who the bidders are. Then the next deadline you'll know a bit more, and then the next deadline you'll know hopefully a bit more about the structure of the bids and stuff, and you'll be able to decide then who you like, who you don't like. Don't like. I mean, I know in the Chelsea situation, the fans' input was very important. There was the Ricketts group who, right at the beginning, were, it was revealed that they'd said some questionable things about race in the past in America, and some of the Chelsea fans, they're not as politicized as United, but they kind of they basically called them to account, and the Ricketts flew in and they had a meeting with the fans, and they promised they weren't going to adopt a sort of undiverse policy or whatever. And I think that was really important. And all the other bidders had to come in because that was their thing. In the case of United, your thing is more about the finances and the way the club's run financially. We
Yeah.
Chelsea, we didn't have that issue because we knew that Abramovich basically wanted to win everything, and he did. So that wasn't an issue for us with during that period. But it, you know, but so the Chelsea thing was kind of concentrating on slightly different issues, although it probably should have focused on what did they want to do financially as well. Um, but
Yeah.
as Ratcliffe, you know, he'll be forced to come out and get support and put his case and all these questions about the way it's going to be financed is going to come out.
Yeah. What about if we shift our attention to the Glazers? What's your understanding about their stance on full or partial sale? We've seen some reports in the media claiming that some of the siblings, there's a little bit of sibling rivalry there. Some of the other siblings want to obtain a higher share to maybe get minority stakeholders in. What's your understanding of that situation? Are the Glazers in this to fully sell this club, or is there still a bit of an if and but about whether they will sell it, or is that just posturing?
um, well, I think as you know, for years and years and years they weren't for doing anything. Didn't matter what protests went on, how bad
No.
the performances were, how many managers, etc. And then it was very interesting. Sometime last year, I can't remember. We broke a story saying that they were going to explore selling a minority stake. Um, and I remember at the time we published the story, and you know, people they kind of asked me. They said, "Yeah, who's going to want to buy a minority stake with the Glazers? Um, the most unpopular football owners. What's in it?" And I said at the time, I said, "Look, my belief is that there's six of it. I think there's six of them. They're divided. This is a first step. Um, once you start talking about a minority state, then you start getting into conversations about, well, what if you are going to leave in a year's time or 2 years' time? And then you start thinking, well, maybe we should just leave now, and just cash our chips in. Um, and I think, so. Then I think it shifted quite quickly from a minority to a full state. Now it's kind of wavering, but I don't think anything's really certain. I mean, my sources have told me that at least one of them wants to sell out altogether. They're not unanimous. I think Avram and Joel are the ones that really are the most committed. Um, could they stay? Could they be a minority state? I mean, it sounds crazy, but maybe they want to see out the modernisation of Old Trafford, or maybe they've got something they feel they need to offer. Maybe they get on with Ratcliffe, and I don't know. All these things, I don't think you can rule anything out really until it's done. Until the deal's
Mm.
done.
That is really interesting because I think every Manchester United fan agrees that, if they want the Glazers all to leave in every capacity and sell all of the football club. But it's interesting to hear you say there that at this moment, some of those murmurs that we might hear, we can't rule it out yet, because I think we
Mm.
haven't got that far down the process yet. And speaking about the process, David, how does it work? How actually does it work? So we know that there's like a 5 p.m. Sorry, 5 p.m. A Friday sort of
Mm.
soft deadline we've heard about. What does that mean, and what happens after that?
Okay. I mean, my understanding about Friday is that this is really just very preliminary. It's like anybody that's interested has just got to write 2 paragraphs and submit it to the bank, Rain, just saying we're interested for these reasons. We are, uh, you know, that's that's all you've got to do. So, uh, I imagine that's fairly easy, and anyone who's got a vague interest will do that. Um, then after that, and then that might just be a soft deadline. So, other people might come in next week or something. They'll then they'll then probably have another deadline where you've got to kind of be much more specific. You've got to say, this is how I'm going to finance it. This is what I'm offering. Um, this is the structure of the board that I propose, a lot more detailed. And usually at that stage, the bank would kind of put forward a shortlist. So they take all those much more detailed proposals and go with a shortlist of. In the case of Chelsea, it was four, and then the Ricketts people came out. But there's no hard and fast rule. I mean, Rain could do it as it sees fit, basically.
Mm.
Rain
And
and
is it
and the
and is it still seen as, a lot of reports were claiming that sort of first quarter of the year, April times, that they wanted this, the Glazers wanted this done by then. Is that still on the forecast with what we're seeing in this timeline and this soft deadline of Friday and then so on and so forth, like you explained? Is that still in line to be completed sort of by spring?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think it could get done by then, but unlike Chelsea had a very definite deadline because
It was different. The government, yeah,
the club was under sanctions. There was no money. If they hadn't done it by the summer, then they couldn't have had transfers and all the rest of it. There's no real issue here, that it has to be done unless the Glazers say, we want to finish this by whatever day. I haven't heard of that, so. I
yeah,
think it
okay,
could be a little bit. I mean, obviously, it's probably in everyone's interest now to get it done as quickly as possible, and that would you know you'd be looking then towards April, May.
yeah. And the price, we saw a lot of reports in the media claiming that people in the Far East, be it the Qataris or whoever else, don't value Manchester United so much at the 5 to 6, at the 6 billion being asked for by the Glazers. What's your understanding of the price and the willingness for buyers to meet that asking price versus trying to sort of haggle it down?
Um, so the benchmark is really Chelsea, the price that they got, because that's the last big deal. I mean, you could say AC Milan maybe, but it's very hard to compare.
Yeah.
AC Milan was about 1 billion, Chelsea 2.5. Um, they're going to want to get more than four, definitely for sure, because um, just in terms of the size of Man United's global fan base, they came out with those figures of 1.1 billion, social media followers and stuff. Um, I mean, amongst the financiers of this, football, that's everyone's dream that they can make money out of that global fan base. I mean, whether they ever get there, I've heard it from
Mm.
Man United for 30 years or something, but um, I mean, I think over four definitely. When you go into the realms of five and six, that's a huge, it's a huge value. It's like Man United's revenues, I think, were about 600 million. So six is they do it, and they tend to value football clubs by a multiple of revenues. So 6 billion would be about 10 times revenues, and that's on the
Hmm.
top end. That Americans would value an NFL team about 10 times revenues. But
Right.
of course, and there are people like Todd Bowley at Chelsea, who think that uh, English football clubs are very undervalued because they have a much bigger global fan base.
Mm.
So at the moment that he thinks Chelsea was very cheap at 2.5, but he's going to say that because he's just bought it.
Yeah,
um,
exactly. It's within his
uh,
right to say that. Yeah.
yeah, who knows? I mean, I would say Jim Ratcliffe would probably think six is too much as well, but you know, so there you're going to be, it's going to be that interesting, nerve-wracking stage where the Glazers say, well, we've only had bids for 5 billion, even though they bought Manu for what was it,
500,
500,
something like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
So we've only got 5 billion. That's not enough. I don't know.
Honestly, yeah, and you wouldn't put that past them to be
Mm.
honest. That was going to be sort of my next question. Would the Glazers walk away from a deal if they don't think that the valuation is being met, or do you think they are? Obviously, they have to. be serious and be stern on it and look to get as much as they can for it. But do you think they would potentially walk away from any sale if they thought it was way below their valuation, or is there a price that you could probably get them down to?
I think anyone's capable of walking away, but particularly when they're, they were. I mean, the only thing that makes me think they were the biggest thing is that Old Trafford needs modernisation. They've kind of accepted that. That's going to cost them. Our estimates suggest about £1 billion to, you know, that
Minimum,
and
surely, yeah.
minimum, yeah, yeah. And my understanding is that they, as a family, they don't want to put that money up. So they've got to find it from somewhere. If it's the two of them, maybe they can get there with some extra help. But so it's going to be complicated. My instinct is that as long as they don't see the bid as being derisory, then I think my instinct is that they will go. But if they're not going to go if it's what they think, like under 5 billion, basically, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, or certainly under four. I mean, there's no way. I don't think that
yeah.
they would say. Somebody said to me that there was a recent deal in America that the NFL, I can't remember now the name, but the team went for £4 billion, and they said that's the biggest ever sports deal or something, and they said that will be a figure in their head because they'll want to at least go away and say we got the
We've
biggest
got the
ever sports
record.
deal. Yeah,
The
yeah,
typical Glazers, yeah, and they already own obviously an NFL team as well. So
yeah.
on to Jim Ratcliffe before we wrap up, David. Can he afford uh, these types of figures being brandished? Some Manchester United fans are saying it would be great for him to be the owner. Manchester United fan, like you said, probably wouldn't. If fans are having a lot of polarizing opinions about Far Eastern owners, it eradicates that, etc., etc. But some fans say, no, we want the people who have the most money. We want the people who can give us the most. We've seen it with Newcastle now. We've seen it with Manchester City. We've seen it with PSG, etc., etc. But just on to Jim Ratcliffe, because some people are saying he doesn't have that much money, or he can't afford this, he can't afford that. Could he afford to buy Manchester United at the prices being brandished, but also, more importantly, afford to invest into it at the level required to improve it?
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer, but I think this is what people are going to be focusing on a lot in the next few weeks. Um, First of all, he is a wealthy man in his own right. I think 13.5 billion, according to Bloomberg. Um, he's got the Ineos company behind him. He's got a good track record in sport. Um, can he afford it? I don't know. I mean, people, like I say, he's going to be pressed on these questions. He's raising money through J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs, and like you said, this is probably going to be debt, and that's going to be red rag to a lot of United fans. I think the question with him is not his commitment or his desire or his um, suitability to be Man United owner. I don't think any of those are questioned. But even though he's Britain's richest man, he's not as rich as the Qataris or the UAE or Man City. So in these days, can he compete? He hasn't done brilliantly at Nice. I mean, it has, as
Exactly.
well. Yeah, yeah. So, but I think United fans will be given hopefully, get the chance, or maybe through the media, but to grill him on this.
David, listen, thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining us. It's been
Okay.
a real eye opener, and we really appreciate you coming by, guys. David Hellier from Bloomberg. There, a lot of people on our channel, David, have been asking for somebody with some expertise and some experience within that field. So it was great to get like sort of a refreshing kind of outlook on all of the subjects you touched on today. So thank you for being a guest on the channel.
Okay.
Really, really appreciate it.
Cheers.